So, welcome to Northern Powerhouses, our business success stories series of interviews, where we discuss with local business leaders their backgrounds, their successes, their challenges, and what's really driving them forwards. And this morning, I'm delighted to have with us David Smith, who's Senior Director at Brewing Services Ltd. So, David, firstly, thank you for spending a bit of time with us. And if you'd like to introduce yourself, Brewing Services, what you do, how you help people, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Brewing Services, we work mainly in the craft brewing sector, helping breweries to become established. We help them with startups. And then once we get them going, we help to monitor quality and the consistency of the products going out from the brewery. We have a regular clientele that we visit all the time. And also, we're very much into training. We think training brewers is very
Yes.
important. It's not much use having lots of shiny equipment if you don't know how to use it. So yeah, we sort of fall into three categories: startups, and then keeping quality and consistency going, and training new staff when they come into the brewing teams and things like that. And we work pretty much all over the UK. In fact, we do work abroad as well. The
Right.
furthest we've been is Lima in Peru,
Oh, wow.
Turkey. We currently have a project over in Spain that we're working on, but we're largely UK based. We have three of us in the team, and we, as I say, we go around the country regularly visiting the breweries that we work with.
Wonderful. Wonderful. What how interesting and so that global connection as well. That's amazing. So, David, if we start talking a little bit about your background specifically, how you got into business and why this particular one for you.
Yeah, well, it goes back to when I was at university. I was studying chemistry down at Essex University back in the early 70s. And one day I went to see my careers tutor, and he sat me down and said, well, this is my final year, and I had no idea what I wanted to do. He said, well, what are your interests and hobbies? I said, look, I'm a science undergraduate. I don't have time to have hobbies. And if I do have time, I'm in the student union bar having a beer. And he said, well, have you ever thought going into brewing? And that was one of those light bulb moments. I thought, that's a
Wonderful.
bloody good idea. So he gave me some information. I wrote off to a number of breweries around the country, all the big seven as there were then. And unfortunately, most of them had taken in their science graduates for the year. So I came back to York. I've always lived in York. Well, I've pretty much always lived in York all my life. So I came back home, wrote off to local breweries. And as we're all sat in here, having just gone through a heat wave, everybody says, remember 1976? Well, I do, because that's the year I started brewing.
Right.
So
Wow.
June 1976, I started work at a small brewery in Tadcaster called Samuel Smith's The Old Brewery.
Yep.
I worked there for 12 years as a production brewer, and then I moved into quality assurance, which gave me a pretty good background in all the aspects of the things you deal with when you've got beer to brew and then out there in the trade dealing with landlords and people like that. And but after 12 years, the industry at the time in the early 80s was contracting. Weren't very many opportunities
Yeah.
for development and to get higher up the ladder. And another piece of advice I was also given by the then head brewer was that I needed more experience. I'd only ever worked in one place. I knew it inside out, but they were looking to bring more people in with greater width of experience.
Yes.
And that's something I've always remembered as well. So I set off and decided that the one sector of the market that was growing at that time was what was then called the mini brewing, or later became the micro brewing, and now is the craft brewing industry. At that time, there were about 80 in the UK, but
Right.
a lot of them setting up with lots of enthusiasm, but not necessarily a lot of technical
Yep.
acumen. So I was there to bridge that gap, and yeah, I started. And in the intervening years, we've set up a good number of breweries around the UK and a few abroad. And our job is to help set them up with a good system of brewing, and then we monitor quality and assurance. And the key word always is consistency. That's what we
Yep.
look for. And we
Yes.
do a lot of training and mentoring. So over the years, it's gone from what I learned basically at Sam Smith's to then translate that into things that work in a smaller brewery.
Brilliant. How it must be fascinating. So when you were growing up, is this what you thought you'd be doing, or did you have another path before you went to college?
I think being someone in York, I thought I'd probably end up working at Rowntree's
Right, yes.
in the labs. And I actually, after 3 or 4 years working in laboratories when I was at college doing sort of tests and things like that in the lab. I decided that wearing a white coat and being in the lab all day with strange smells probably wasn't what I wanted to do. Instead, I ended up wearing a white coat and a tie, walking around with strange smells in the brewery. So you never know where you're going to end up.
No, no, that's absolutely wonderful, and they are great smells, aren't they? I remember doing a very long time ago the Black Sheep Brewery tour,
Oh yeah,
and we they just was it the day we were there? But I think it was the day we were there. There was in I think where they do some of the pouring out and stuff was in I think it's an old chapel or something, but it's very much a point to the roof, and the whole place just filled with this mist, this
yeah,
cloud of beer, of beer smell. It was just delightful because you're
yeah.
right in the top. I think where you come through, the
Yes,
little
yeah,
balcony right at the top, so everything was coming up and over us. It was fabulous.
yeah. A nice brewery to visit. I would recommend it to anybody if you want to see an old-fashioned brewery, and also Theakston. So you've got two in the same town that are
Same town,
both
yeah,
worth a visit.
brilliant. Yeah, I've been for a long time. I must go, but that's a great idea. So looking back, and I think you said 37 years. Did you say
Something like that, into the
that's
38th, maybe, yes.
what an amazing longevity. So looking back over time, what are some of the biggest issues and challenges that you've had to overcome over that time, David?
I think for me, it was actually moving from working in a relatively large brewery, doing large volumes,
Yes,
to
yeah,
then downsizing to something where you're much more hands-on. You're dealing with bags of malt, tipping in, stirring the mash, all of which was done by machinery. It is done by machinery in most large breweries, but getting really to grips with the basics of brewing from a
yeah,
completely different angle. So for the first few years that I was working, maybe the first 5 or 6 years in different ways, it was a very steep learning curve. You think you know everything until you start again in a
yeah,
different way, and then
yeah,
you realize how much you don't know. And
yeah,
and so I literally went back to school in terms of brewing and learnt everything again, so that I working a smaller sort of system. The advice I would give now to breweries would be probably different to what I was maybe given when I first started out.
yeah,
You know.
yeah. That makes
And
sense.
and along the way, you just pick up so much. I always think, experience counts for so much, and the more you get out there, and again, going back to what that head brewer Sam's told me, what you need to get out and get more experience, and he was 100% right. So now we can work pretty much in any brewing environment with any type of equipment, because over the years we've pretty much worked with every type of equipment and every type of brewer. People I've
Brilliant.
trained have been airline pilots, car mechanics, teachers. A lot of people come into brewing as a second or even third career.
Yep,
They mortgage the home, they sell the Harley Davidson, all sorts of things like that to raise the capital
yep.
to start a brewery. And our job is just to quite often that these people, they've always wanted to do it, and
Yes,
our job is to help them
to help them do it.
get
Wonderful.
them brewing efficiently from day one.
Great to know that there's people like you around to do that because I would imagine as you say it's a big leap for many people that probably as you say it's more a passion than an obvious career step from where they are and therefore not having access to the knowledge that you can give them. I think I heard a great phrase a little while ago which was something like great decisions comes from experience. Making great decisions comes from experience, which comes from making bad decisions.
I would agree. Yes,
It's the
absolutely. Yes.
that's a great one. And obviously we will learn from obviously a lot of the experience we get, often the bad decisions as well as the good ones. What are the biggest learnings you would say you'd have about running a business and growing a business?
When I first started out in business, or when I left working for a large company, working for myself, obviously no idea. But about a year before that, some people might remember there was a lady in charge at the top called Maggie Thatcher.
Yes, yes,
And Maggie was
indeed.
very good on entrepreneurship. And
Yes,
she set up lots of schemes where people like me could learn the skills, learn about profit loss accounts, learn about
brilliant.
marketing and things like that. So I actually spent about 6 or 8 months before I launched my business going and absorbing as much information
Great.
which was not technical brewing. It was to do with, how am I going to
Yeah,
survive once I don't get that monthly salary coming in? And
absolutely.
that was great. So I always say I do thank Maggie Thatcher for that. There's other things maybe not, but
Yeah.
starting up new businesses was what she was about, enterprise. And I
Yes.
still think, that's what we're looking at with small breweries. It's all about enterprise and getting them
Yeah.
going and hitting the ground running. And that's very key. If you start in business and you're still learning, if you're trying to learn too much, you just
Yeah.
don't get that critical momentum that you need to drive the business
Absolutely.
forward.
Absolutely. And that pre-learning, get yourself ready, was great rather than, learning at the point at which you made the jump.
Yeah.
And
And avoids those bad decisions sometimes.
yeah, absolutely. And one thing we find in the work we do is there's a big mindset difference, an identity difference between being an employee and a business owner.
Mm.
It is, as I think you mentioned the idea of having a regular salary is what as employees we can expect, but once we get to business ownership, that disappears, and that's quite a challenge, I think, for many people. How did you adopt and adapt to that challenge of not knowing whether or not the end of the month was going to reap some pay?
I had a wife who was working. That's always beneficial.
Great.
She's run her own businesses and done quite a lot, and she's
Brilliant.
certainly many time enough we've laughed that she was obviously supporting me for a good length of time. It takes about, I would say, 3 or 4 years to establish any business till you're actually making substantial money,
Traditionally.
or
Yeah.
you've given up by that point. I don't know, one of the two.
Yeah.
The other thing I would always recommend is a good set of accountants. I've
Yes.
had the same set of accountants now for 37 years, and
Brilliant.
they keep me on the straight and narrow. And we have regular meetings, and they look after all the VAT and the
Brilliant.
all the things like that, which I don't want to get involved with.
Yep.
I know what I'm good at, and therefore, why would I waste my time, which I can use profitably, to
Brilliant.
do the things I'm not good at, which is accounting?
Brilliant.
So I think having a team around you as well, the people that
Yes.
can help you with your business. So finding a good accountant, I'd say, is certainly number one.
Brilliant. Great advice. I think it's very true, and it's great that the longevity of the relationship. Clearly, they're doing a great job, which is wonderful. And I think you're aware we're a business coaching organisation. I'm keen to know the best coaches you've worked with, whether that's business, sport, life in general. Who's had the biggest impact on you specifically, David?
Um, I think in terms of experience, one of the things about if you start a business up, you're on your own, and building up a network takes time. It's a lot easier these days with Zoom and social media to start a network up. So I used to go to lots of meetings of brewers, through the Institute of Brewing and things like that, where I would network and meet up with other brewers. So forming that network was quite important.
Yeah.
There's an organization called the Small Independent Brewers Association. They were quite helpful in giving me leads and things like that. So it's building up that
Brilliant.
critical mass of networking and things like that. But
Brilliant.
I always think also going back to my early days when I was still, if you like, training as a brewer, the brewers would all get together and in the sort of brewing office a couple of times a day, and problems within the brewery were discussed. And that's a good way of passing on information. As junior brewers, we had to keep our mouths shut, but
Yeah.
listening to the senior brewers and having those people with all that knowledge around you that
Yeah.
I could absorb was, I think, very important
Yeah.
and certainly helped me along. And that's the sort of stuff I'm now trying to pass on, obviously, to other people
Others. Yeah. Yeah.
who quite often feel very much on their own. So we also, at the end of the phone, if you have a problem, ring us, in the middle of the day, middle of the night. We always say the yeast never sleeps, so neither do we. We've even had phone calls on Christmas Day. If beer's brewing and that's when we need it, we have to be ready and
Yes.
able to provide answers. But I think absorbing knowledge and I still go to lectures, conferences, things like that.
Brilliant.
You never stop learning, and
No.
it's about picking up that information that you can then pass on to other people. That is pretty critical for being a consultant.
Yeah. Agreed. No, that makes a lot of sense. And do you have any catch yourself using any favorite quotes or sayings about business or life in general that you can share?
Hundreds.
Brilliant. What's your
I often
favorite?
quote John Ruskin and people like that. And our company motto is adapt and overcome. And
Great. Like
yeah,
it.
we have so many. I could write a book on the quotes that I'm teaching students and people like that. I'm forever bringing out quotes. But it's there are plenty out there, but yeah, Ruskin certainly is a guy who knew his stuff about if you pay the least amount, you get the shoddiest equipment. It's better to pay that little bit more and get something that does the job. And we keep seeing that to people. It's not about the price. It's really
Absolutely.
about having something that works. But
Absolutely.
yeah, he's one of my favorite people to quote.
I think it's really important to talk about value rather than price because it's all about the value we receive, and if the value is significantly ahead of the price, then the deal is obvious.
Yeah,
And most people I work with and I meet, the fact that unfortunately their prices are below their value, and it's actually helping people to understand, educate their clients on value rather than price is really key. And you say learning is important. Do you have any favourite books or podcasts about business or success that you could share?
um, there's a very good professor of brewing called Charles Bamforth, and he's done a very nice beer called "Beer is Proof That God Loves Us." But I've got technical brew books going back to
I'm sure.
1795, and I like reading old brewing texts and things like that. And I've written a book myself, so that's probably the best
Oh,
one.
brilliant. What's the book called?
Um, the Fundamentals of Mini-Brewing, which I wrote to accompany a course I started again about 30 some years ago, and still runs twice a year in York with Brew
Wow.
York. And yeah, but there's so much. I mean, you'd need an Encyclopedia Britannica almost of the brewing process. So,
I can
but
imagine.
reading articles and say going to lectures and things like that is still pretty
Yeah,
key for me to keep the old brain ticking over.
brilliant. And what would you say you've learned about yourself throughout your journey so far?
I perhaps should ask my wife that one. Um, Probably trying to be more tolerant of people and their fallibilities. I am still the person when I'm teaching somebody to brew, halfway through, I'll be pushing them out the way and doing it myself, rather than taking that step back. So, yeah, I suppose trying to curb impatience and, things like that. And also explaining things. People say I can be quite condescending because I tend to over explain. But I think, well, no, I know. It's quite important to learn as much as you can, and so yeah,
I think the
perhaps
flips.
tolerance is what I'm learning most.
Brilliant, brilliant. No, I mean it. I mean it would make sense. I mean it makes sense to over-educate rather than under-educate, especially if that's what we're there for, isn't it? Is
Yeah.
to pass on knowledge. Um, and so looking forward then, David, what does the future look like for you guys, and what challenges do you think you might face, if any?
Well, I think Chris, at the moment the hospitality industry is going through a bit of a
Yes,
lean time. It's never really recovered from COVID.
yes,
People, I still think, are sometimes afraid of going out and meeting the friends in the pub. The pubs are closing. Yet, I think hopefully it will come back. It's just taking a lot longer than people ever thought. And it's affected a lot of breweries. There's been so many closures since COVID,
yeah,
and we're still seeing them every week. Having said that, pre-COVID, they were starting up at quite a rate of knots. So I think we got to a sort of crossover point even before COVID, where the number of breweries outstripped the amount of drinkers. And
right.
post-COVID, we're still working on new projects and new breweries coming in. But yes, I think we still need people to go out more. And I
Yeah,
know beer is expensive now, as any drinks are, but it's about the conviviality. To
yeah,
me, beer isn't something special. It's just something to enjoy on a night out with friends.
yeah.
And so, yes, it's hopefully the industry will come back. And from our
Yes,
point of view, we'll keep out there pushing for quality and consistency because I think that's key for any business to keep going is
yeah.
to make sure what they're producing is of a standard people want to drink.
Yeah, brilliant. That makes perfect sense. As a beer drinker, it's been great to see how many really interesting beers they're continually coming out that you can enjoy and find one that fits your palate rather than just the standard stuff that it's finding a beer that fits my palate rather than trying to adjust my palate to fit a range of standard beers, if that makes sense.
Mm.
Um, And I'm
There's
keen
plenty of
to.
variety out there these days. Yeah.
There definitely is. I mean, it's great. I mean, I know there's like two or three sort of local small breweries within, within about 2 miles of where I am right now, which is great. Um, and David, I'm keen to know what you'd say to anyone that was thinking of going into business right now.
Research it well.
Yep.
And like I said, when I started, I was really thinking about starting my own brewery. And then I realized that as I learned more and I got into it, that I actually enjoyed more going out and working with other people. So don't be afraid to change course. If it doesn't quite fit, then change, the pattern of what you want to
Yeah.
do, and yeah, look elsewhere,
Yeah.
because I think change is good for all of us
Yep.
to make us think. But research what you want to do first, but then don't be afraid to change if things don't quite go the way you expect.
Very sound advice. Very, very, very sound advice. And looking back, if you started again, is there anything significant that you do differently, do you think?
I don't think so. I think I. I suppose the one positive, as I say, decision I made was to stay with consultancy and not to keep harboring setting up my own brewery.
Yep.
Um, but no, I think I've been very fortunate in the advice I've been given over the years, what I've learned over the years, to the point where I always say to people, I've been lucky to have a full-time hobby all my life. And
Yeah.
I like making the stuff and I like drinking the stuff. So what could be better?
Absolutely. What a great advert for what you do. And finally, David, what would be the best advice you could give an 18-year-old you if you could go back in time and do that?
Um, Again, learn as much as you can around the subject. And there's one thing that John Ruskin says that learn well from one good mentor rather than canvass the opinion of many. That's something I think applies these days to the internet. There's so much rubbish out on the internet. What you really want to do is learn to brew, go and work with a brewery, absorb the knowledge before you ever set out on your own. And the more knowledge you have, the better equipped you are to deal with the problems that you will definitely encounter. But if you
Absolutely.
can have someone like us on board, it does, I think, make a lot of difference to people.
I would 100% agree. And I don't think, I can't say it's a quote because I don't know where it came from, but there's a phrase that comes to mind, which is the most expensive advice you can get is free advice from an idiot.
Absolutely, yeah,
So, because it's seek out the people that know and they've got a track record
yeah,
and understand where we go. Because there's always people who want to give you advice, but it's more advice on what they would or wouldn't do rather than what you could or couldn't do, I
yeah.
find.
And as an add-on to that, we were once told that we were reassuringly expensive.
Brilliant. Bang on. That's
And I use that quite a lot. Yeah. If people say
absolutely.
you're too expensive, I say no, but we can do the job.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the investment in what we do is not insignificant. And if anybody has a question, I say, well, look, I'm more than happy to introduce you to my three cheapest uh, so-called competitors. Because if you want cheap, go for cheap. That's no problem. That's not a problem for me. But if you want value, if you want achievement, if you want success, that's a different question. And
Yeah.
that's then the value proposition comes in. So makes lots of sense. Um, David, it's been really fascinating talking to you today, and obviously you amazing at what you do for such a longevity of your business. And for anyone that's watching and would like to get in touch with you or Brewing Services, what's the best way to do that?
Well, I suppose email David at brewingservices.co.uk or
Brilliant.
enquiries at brewingservices.co.uk. I'll go to myself or any of my colleagues, and any one of us will be more than happy to pick up the phone and I'll contact you and have a chat.
Brilliant. Well, David, it's been, I say, fascinating talking to you. And thank you so much for your time. And it'd be great to swing by another 6, 12 months and just see how things have developed, hopefully with hospitality in general, but also with you and your business. But for now, thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you.